Okay, along the same lines as we did last lesson, because what we did last lesson was simplify through multiplying and dividing rational expressions. This is going to be more of that type of question. Okay, so if you look at a quick refresher on how to multiply and divide fractions, you don't need common denominators when you multiply and divide. This is a common mistake. You don't need those. To multiply, you can just multiply across 60 over 40. Then you could simplify. This ends up being 3 over 2. That's one method, but I want to show you another method. The other method is to simplify before you divide. For example, if we're going to multiply across, this is almost like there's a big division line here. Can you see that 5 and 10 have a factor of 5? And you could cancel out a 5 here and leave 1. Cancel out a 5 here and leave 2. Okay, same with 12 and 4. If we cancel out 12 and 4, divide them both by 4, you end up with 3 over 1. And now when you multiply, you get straight to the answer. So you can simplify at the end or you can simplify at the beginning. With rational expressions, not just fractions, with ones with variables, it's easier to simplify first. Okay, so let's try simplifying first here. All right, first thing I'm going to do is rewrite it as multiplication. Okay, you take the second fraction and reciprocate it, and then turn to multiplication. And I see that I can cancel out a 3. Okay, that leaves me with just -1 on top, and I can cancel out a 5. That leaves me with 4 here. So I end up with -1 times 4 is -4, and 1 times 1 is 1. So this is just -4. Okay, let's do the same thing with this one. Rewrite it as multiplication. Okay, by the way, I could put that negative on top. It doesn't matter where you put it, but I don't worry about it till the end. So if I simplify this, I could cancel out a 6 with these two numbers. If I divide this by 6, I get 1. If I divide 24 by 6, I get 4. And then I can cancel out something here. I can divide both by 4. So I get 1 and I get 2. So now multiplying across the top, I have -1 times 1. That's -1. And here I have 1 times -2, which is -2. Cancel that out. I get 1 over 2. Okay, hopefully you remember how to add and subtract, multiply and divide fractions, because you will need that. Okay, so let's take a look at these questions. Ooh, apparently multiplication turns to a G when you post it on OneNote. Okay, so we're multiplying here. You could just multiply across the top, come up with 6ab squared, and then multiply the bottom 45a squared. You could do that, but I'm going to try to encourage you to simplify before you multiply. You'll see what I mean in a second. Okay, is there anything I can simplify here? All right, I see a 3 and a 9. Let's cancel out the 3, it becomes 1. Let's cancel out the 9, it becomes 3. And then I see that there is an a. If I divide this by a, I get 1. If I divide this by a, I get just a, right? Because a squared divided by a, this is a. Okay, the reason is because you have a times a over a. One of the a's, a divided by a is 1. Okay, so that's why we just have 1a there. So now multiplying, I have 2 times 1 times 1 times b squared. So 2b squared. And then here, 3 times 5a, 15a. Looking at the denominator, what are my variables in the denominator? Just an a, so a can't be 0. All right, and that's simplified. All right, let's try another one. Okay, again, this is multiplication. And you can see why I don't want to multiply this. I don't want to multiply that out. I would much rather simplify first. There's no, if I multiply x squared times x, I'm going to end up with x to the 4th. This is going to be crazy. Okay, I don't want to do that. I want to simplify first. Is there anything that can be canceled in the numerator and denominator? Well, there's an x plus 2 and an x plus 2. By the way, when I say canceled, what's x plus 2 divided by x plus 2? It equals 1. What's anything times 1? It hasn't changed anything. Okay, so I apologize if I say cancel. They're not canceling, they're dividing out, and it's leaving you with a 1. Anything else? Well, yeah, I can divide x squared, that's x times x, divided by x, that will also cancel out. X squared divided by x squared is 1. Okay, so now let's multiply. 2 times 5 is 10, x minus 4, and in the denominator I get 24. Now quick check, and you can see that I actually missed something. 10 and 24 have a common factor. They have a common factor of 2. So if I divide both the numerator and denominator by 2, I get this. What can x not be? Well, looking in my original denominator, x cannot be 0, and x cannot be negative 2. Okay? Now, division. Again, just like we did with the fractions, your first step with division, it should be to rewrite it as multiplication. Okay? So I have 7n squared. Now be careful, this is not the same as this. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite that. Okay, so I'm just going to take an extra step to simplify that denominator there. This is actually 49n squared. Okay, now let's see what we can simplify. Well, I see n cubed here, n squared here. What is n cubed divided by n squared? It's n. Okay, so if I cancel out the n squared here, I cancel out the n squared there, I'm left with n. Anything else? Yes, I can divide a 7 out there, and if I divide out 7 here, I'm left with 7. And if I divide 12 and 4 by 4, I get 3 here. So, multiplying across the top, the 7's been cancelled. I have an n, and I have negative 3, so negative 3n. Here I have 1 times 7, that's it. Okay? Now, what can n not be? Well, you're going to look at the original question. Is there any problem here? No, there's no variable, so there's no non-permissible value, except we are dividing by all of this. So none of this can equal 0. This means that, if I look over here, if I have n equals 0, I'm going to end up with 7 times 0 squared over negative 12. This would be 0 over negative 12. This would be 0, so I would be dividing by 0. Okay, can't do that. So, non-permissible value, x cannot be 0. All right. Another division question. Let's rewrite it. So I have 3x times x plus 5 over 10 times x minus 3. Okay, what can simplify? X minus 3. X. Anything else? Yes, the 10 and the 5 can be reduced to 1 and 2 like that. So, simplifying, multiplying across the top, I'm left with just 3 times x plus 5. Multiplying across the bottom, I'm left with just 4. X cannot be, again, we're looking here, so x cannot be 0, and it cannot be negative 5. Okay. Well, let's make it a little bit harder. Why is it harder? Because you have to factor first. Okay. Lots of factoring. Now, in the back of my mind, I would always be thinking something must be in common to simplify. There's no guarantee, but, usually there is. Now this, before you factor, let's put a real star here. Look for the least common factor first, the lowest common factor. Okay? or actually we call it the greatest common factor. Always look for the greatest common factor here. If you take out a 2, you're left with x squared plus 3x minus 4. And then if I factor that, I get x plus 4, x minus 1. If I don't take out the greatest common factor, if I don't take out this 2, then this x plus 4 and x plus 4 won't be the same. Okay, you need to take out the greatest common factor. Take out a greatest common factor here, I get x plus 5. Anything else simplify? Yeah, I can take out an x plus 5. I can take out an x minus 1. Alright, that must be giving you a little bit of joy. I always love doing this. Look at all this stuff I'm canceling out. My answer turns to x plus 1 over 6. Because I've canceled everything out. Come on, that's got to give you a little bit of fun. That's way more fun than what are you doing for entertainment these days? Sitting in your basement playing video games? That's way more fun. Okay? What can x not be? Negative 4. Looking here, x can't be 1. Looking here, x can't be negative 5. Okay? Alright, I think this is last question for today's notes. Let's rewrite this as multiplication. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to factor out a greatest common factor if I see one. Okay, because I can see there's a greatest common factor here. If I take out a 3, I'm left with x squared minus 4x minus 21. And I know this was a test question a couple years ago, and lots of people couldn't factor this because they forgot that you can take out a greatest common factor. Okay, so that's written as multiplication now. Let's take it one more step. Let's factor. Okay, so this is x minus 7, x plus 3, and this is x plus 2, x minus 2. Any common factors? X minus 2, x minus 7, 3. So on the top, what's left? X plus 3. On the bottom, what's left? 3 times x plus 2. Alright. Non-permissible values, x cannot be. Alright, let's look here first. X cannot be 7. And then remember that this was a division question. So anything that will make this equal to 0 is a problem. Okay? So when I look here, anything that will make this fraction 0 is a non-permissible value. So x can't be 7, x can't be negative 3, x can't be negative 2, and x can't be 2. Alright? I'm looking at each one of these x's. What would make each of those factors 0? Okay? So, homework, page 537, numbers 3 to 8, 11, 12, AB, and 13. And I'm pretty sure, again, there should be a worksheet there. If someone finds it's not there, let me know and I will post it. Okay, so there's your homework. Lesson 2 done.